The personal touch Ted brought to life extended, we know, well beyond the Senate colleagues. It reflected the kind of man that he was and the kind of laws that he wrote. For 1,000 days in the White House, as Chris Dodd mentioned, President Kennedy inspired. For 80 days on the presidential campaign trail, Robert Kennedy gave us reason to believe and hope again. And for more than 17,000 days as a United States Senator, Ted Kennedy changed the course of history as few others have. Without him, there might still be a military draft. The war in Vietnam might have lasted longer. There might have been delays in granting the Voting Rights Act or in passing Medicare or Medicaid. Soviet Jewish refuseniks might have been ignored, and who would have been there to help them as Ted did? Without him, we might not have stood up against apartheid as forcefully as we did, and the barriers to fair immigration might still be higher today if everyone only knew. Without Ted, 18-year-olds might not be able to vote. There might not be a Martin Luther King Day, Meals on Wheels, student loans, increases in the minimum wage, equal funding for women's college sports, health insurance, the Family Medical Leave Act, the Americans with Disabilities Act, workplace safety, AmeriCorps, children's health insurance, if everyone only knew. He stood against judges who would turn back the clock on constitutional rights. He stood against the war in Iraq, his proudest vote. And for nearly 4 decades and all through his final days, he labored with all of his might to make health care a right for all Americans, and we will do that in his honor. In these last months, every visit Ted made to the Senate elicited an unstoppable outpouring of affection. Tears welled up in the eyes of Republicans and Democrats. Everyone missed his skills, his booming call to arms, and conscience. On his last visit, Chris Dodd and I sat in the back row beside his desk and listened to Teddy regale us with an imitation of his efforts to practice throwing out a ball for the Red Sox opening game. He laughed and he poked fun at how reluctant his hand and muscles were to obey his commands. I was in awe of this moment of humility and self-deprecating humor in the face of genuine frustration. And as he so often said over the years, we have to take issues seriously, but never take ourselves too seriously. He was a master of that too, and one of the great lessons that he taught me. In the end, his abiding gift was his incomparable love of life and his commitment to make better the life of the world. In between his time changing the world, he found time to capture it in marvelous paintings. He was a talented, gifted artist, and as we know, an incurable romantic. Who else would have thought to hide their engagement ring on a coral reef in St. Croix as they were swimming and diving so Vicky could find it? It never occurred to him that the waters might wash the ring away. But one thing's certain, their love endured from then until now, and it will endure forever. Massachusetts has always had its own glorious love affair with the sea. Like his brothers before him, salt water was in his veins. Teddy lived by the sea, and he lived joyously on it. The evening he passed away, I looked out at the ocean where gray sky met gray water. No horizon, the sky almost seemed to be in mourning. It was not a time for sailing. But the next afternoon, as I sat at his home, I looked out at a perfect Nantucket Sound, and I thought to myself with certainty, he's on a schooner now. He's sailing. Jack, Joe, Bobby on the foredeck, Rosemary, Eunice, Kathleen, Pat, trading stories with their parents, and Teddy at the helm, steering his steady course. Sail on, my friend, sail on.